My name is Sienna Evans. I am 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, my sister handed out DNA kits to everyone at our family reunion as a fun surprise. No one thought much about it. We laughed, spat into small tubes, sealed them, and went right back to eating potato salad like nothing unusual had happened. Then the results came in. My father called me, shouting, "What did you do?" he yelled. I told him I didn't do anything, Dad, but it looks like someone at that table isn't exactly who they say they are. He hung up right away. Then my mother called. She was crying, but not the kind of crying that means she is hurt. It was the kind that comes when someone has been exposed. After that, my grandmother called. She is 80 years old, her voice calm and firm like stone, and she said 5 words I will never forget. Finally, I have been waiting 30 years for this call. Before I go deeper into everything, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly connect with this story. I would also love to know where you are listening from, so leave your location and local time in the comments. Now let me take you back to July 4th weekend, the day my sister walked into the reunion carrying a box full of DNA kits and a smile that had no idea what it was about to start. In Cedarville, Ohio, population just over 9,000, the Evans family was known by everyone. My father, Gerald Evans, had been a deacon at Grace Community Church for more than 20 years. Every Sunday, front pew left side without fail. My mother, Donna, managed the yearly bake sale and organized the church potluck like a strict commander. People in town talked about my parents the way people admire a house with a perfect lawn. Impressed, maybe a bit jealous, but never questioning what might be hidden underneath. My older brother Marcus was the golden child. 36, already a regional sales manager, married with 2 kids, the kind of son my father loved to show off at church events. My younger sister Brooke was the baby, 27, cheerful and charming, the one everyone liked right away. And then there was me, the middle child. The registered nurse who worked long double shifts at County General bought her own home at 29 and still got introduced at family gatherings as the responsible one. That sounds like praise, but it wasn't. It was more like a role. It meant Sienna won't cause trouble. Sienna will fix things quietly. Sienna will stay silent when it matters most. I was good at it too. I had years of practice. My grandmother Ruth Evans lived alone in a small house on Maple Lane, the same house she had lived in for 45 years. She used to come to every family dinner, every birthday, every holiday gathering. But somewhere around the time I turned 14, the invitations started to become less frequent. No one ever explained why. If I asked, my mother would wave it off and say, "Grandma is getting older. She prefers her quiet." I believed that for 20 years. I believed a lot of things for a long time. There were signs, though. There are always signs if you look closely enough. When I was 10, I woke up late at night to the sound of my parents arguing behind their bedroom door. My mother's voice was sharp and shaky, the kind that sits right next to panic. My father's voice was low and controlled, the way someone sounds when they are no longer explaining but warning. I pressed my ear against the hallway wall, trying to hear. I couldn't make out full sentences, just pieces. "You promised it was over? Don't you ever bring that up again?" The next morning, everything looked normal. Pancakes on the table, smiles on their faces. My father reading the newspaper. My mother humming while cooking eggs. I looked at them and thought maybe I had imagined it. But I didn't imagine it. I just learned at 10 years old that in this family, mornings erase what happens at midnight. There was another time when Grandma Ruth showed up without warning when I was 12. She walked straight past my mother in the kitchen and went into the garage where my father was arranging tools. The door slammed shut, their voices got louder. My mother turned up the TV and told us to finish our homework. Ruth left about 20 minutes later without saying goodbye. She didn't come back for 6 months. No one explained it. No one asked questions. And then there was the letter. I was 14, searching for stamps in my father's desk drawer when I found an envelope hidden under old bank papers. Inside was a single page written in neat, cursive handwriting. I didn't read much, just the last line and the signature, "I will always love you, K." I put it back, closed the drawer, and never spoke about it until now. July 4th weekend came around again, the yearly Evans family reunion. My parents' backyard looked the same as always. Folding tables with checkered cloths, a charcoal grill, smoking in the corner, small flags placed in the center of each table. Around 25 people came, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even a few neighbors who had been coming so long they felt like family. My father stood at the grill wearing his world's best dad apron, flipping burgers, shaking hands, and laughing at the same jokes he had told 100 times. Brooke arrived late, carrying a large cardboard box under her arm and smiling brightly. "Okay, everyone," she said, placing the box on the table. "I got us something fun." She opened it and pulled out the kits, 12 of them stacked neatly, bright-colored boxes you have probably seen in advertisements everywhere, DNA testing kits. "We can find out where we really come from," she said excitedly. Most of the family laughed. Aunt June said she already knew she was Irish. Uncle Harold spit into the tube right there at the table without even reading the instructions. My father didn't move. He stood at the grill, spatula in hand, staring at the box like it was something dangerous. "I don't need a machine to tell me who I am," he said. "Relax, Dad," Brooke replied. "It just shows ancestry percentages, like how much Irish or German you are. It's just for fun." I saw his shoulders relax just a little. Ancestry percentages. Nothing more. He picked up a kit, looked at it once, and placed it on the side table next to his plate. My mother did the same. Neither of them opened their kits for the rest of the day. What I didn't know at the time was that Gerald and Donna never sent their samples in. They took the kits home and left them in a drawer. My father thought that was enough. If he didn't take the test, then nothing could be discovered. He was 60 years old. He didn't understand that these systems have something called DNA relatives, that the moment any of his children sent in a sample, the system would match us with others in the database, including a 31-year-old carpenter living 2 hours away who had submitted his own sample 2 years earlier, searching for the father who had left him behind. Gerald didn't need to take the test. We had already done it for him, and Grandma Ruth, sitting quietly at the far end of the yard with a glass of sweet tea, looked at Brooke, then at the box of DNA kits, and smiled. A real smile, the first one I had seen from her in years. I didn't understand that smile back then. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday evening, I was sitting on my couch still wearing my scrubs after a 12-hour shift when a notification appeared on my phone. Results ready. I opened the app. Ethnicity estimate 74% Northwestern European, 18% British and Irish, 8% broadly European. Nothing surprising. Then I tapped on DNA relatives, and it felt like the air left my lungs. At the top of the list, above the cousins and distant matches I expected, was a name I had never seen before. Nathan H. 25.3% shared DNA. Relationship estimate, half-sibling. I stared at the screen and read it again. Half-sibling. That means we share one biological parent. I don't have a half-sibling. At least that's what I had believed my entire life. I have Marcus and Brooke. That's it. That has always been the whole picture. I scrolled further down the screen. The match was only 3 days old. Nathan had already seen the connection, and he had sent me a message. I opened it. Hi, I know this is strange. I've been searching for my biological father for 15 years. My mom never told me his name. 3 days ago, your DNA matched mine as a half-sibling. I don't want to cause problems. I just want to know, am I your brother? I read that message 4 times. Each time, that last sentence hit me harder than before. Am I your brother? This wasn't just numbers on a screen anymore. This was a real person, a 31-year-old man somewhere, staring at his phone, waiting for the simplest answer of his life. I called Brooke. Her voice was already trembling. Sienna, did you see it? She said. I matched him too. Both of us. Half-sibling. Same result. Same father. Before we could even process it, my phone buzzed again. Incoming call. Dad. I answered, and his voice came through sharp before I could even speak. What did you do? What did you and your sister do? I didn't do anything, Dad, I said, trying to stay calm. But it looks like someone at that table isn't who they claim to be. Silence. 5 full seconds. I counted them. In my entire life, I had never heard Gerald Evans stay quiet for that long. Then he spoke again, and that's when I knew everything. He didn't ask, "Who is Nathan?" He didn't say, "This must be a mistake." Instead, he said, "How is he in the system? How is he even showing up?" He already knew who Nathan was. He just never thought Nathan could be found. In my father's mind, his secret was buried in a town 2 hours away with a woman who had stayed silent for 30 years. He didn't realize that the moment his children submitted DNA, the system connected all the pieces. When he spoke again, his voice changed. It became low and controlled, the same midnight voice I had heard when I was a child. Listen carefully. Sienna, that man, whoever he is, you do not respond to him. You tell him the test is wrong. You say it's a lab error or some kind of glitch. Do you understand me? My throat felt tight. Dad, he's asking if he's my brother. He is nobody, he snapped. And if you respond to him, you are choosing a stranger over your own family. He's no TA stranger, I said quietly. He shares our DNA. Delete the message. Delete the app. And do not talk about this to anyone. Then he hung up. I sat there holding my phone, staring at Nathan's message still glowing on the screen. My father wasn't asking me to hide the truth. He was asking me to create a lie. He wanted me to look at a man who had spent 15 years searching and tell him he didn't exist. I'm a nurse. My whole career is based on one rule: do no harm. And my father had just asked me to do exactly that. My mother called about 40 minutes later. I let it ring a few times before answering. She was crying, soft and controlled crying, the kind that feels almost practiced. Sienna, honey, please don't reply to that man, she said. Your father has high blood pressure. This kind of stress could put him in the hospital. You're a nurse. You understand. Using my profession against me, that was new. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady, did you know? There was silence, then a long, shaky breath. It's complicated, she said. Complicated. That word families used like a lock when the truth is too heavy to carry. How long, Mom? I asked. This isn't the time to... How long? She didn't answer. She just cried more. I ended the call. About an hour later, Brooke called again, panic clear in her voice. Sienna, Dad just called me. He said, if this doesn't stop, he's going to sell Grandma's house. He said she needs professional care. He said Pine Ridge, the assisted living place on Route 9 that everyone in town whispers about. My grandmother's house, the one she had lived in for 45 years, was partly in my father's name. He had added himself to the deed 15 years earlier when he helped her refinance after my grandfather died. He had control, and now he was using it. Then at 8:47 p.m., my phone rang again. The screen showed Grandma Ruth. I answered. Voice was calm, steady, almost warm. Finally, she said. I've been waiting 30 years for this call. Grandma, Dad is threatening to sell your house, I told her. Let him try, she replied. I would rather sleep in a cardboard box than spend another day protecting his lie. She paused. Come to my house, Sienna. I will tell you everything. And don't tell your father you're coming. I drove there in the dark. Her porch light was already on when I arrived. I sat in my car for a moment, my hands shaking not from fear but from the weight of what I was about to hear. I knew something big was about to change. Then I got out and walked to the door. Grandma Ruth's kitchen smelled the same as always, like coffee and cedarwood. 2 mugs were already waiting on the table. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't waste time. She sat across from me, folded her hands, and began speaking like she had been holding this story inside her for decades. 30 years ago, she said, your father was a branch manager at First Mutual Savings on Main Street. He was 30 years old, ambitious, and charming when it suited him. A woman named Karen Holt started working there as a teller. She paused for a moment, then continued. They had an affair. It lasted about 6 months, maybe longer. I don't know exactly. Karen became pregnant. She told your father, and your father, my son, panicked. Ruth's jaw tightened slightly. She placed her mug down carefully. He gave her a choice, stay quiet or lose her job. He was her boss, Sienna. She was 25, no degree, no savings, and pregnant. She didn't really have a choice. She quit, Ruth continued. Moved 2 hours east to a place called Briarfield. She had the baby alone. My voice came out as a whisper. Nathan, Nathan, Ruth said. Your brother? I pressed my hands against the table, trying to steady myself. The kitchen was quiet except for the ticky NG clock on the wall. How do you know all of this? I asked. Because Karen called me about a year after Nathan was born, Ruth said. She was struggling. Working double shifts at a grocery store, paying for daycare she couldn't afford. She asked me for help. She said your father wouldn't answer her calls. Ruth looked straight at me. I wanted to help her. I was going to. But Gerald found out I had spoken to her. She took a slow breath. He told me, if you say one word, I will never let you see your grandchildren again. Your mother found out about 5 years later, Ruth went on. You were about 8 at the time. Donna saw phone records with calls to a number she didn't recognize. She traced them back to Karen and confronted Gerald. Ruth shook her head slightly. And your father did what he always does. He swore it was over, said he had not spoken to Karen since she left. He begged, even cried, and Gerald Evans does not cry unless it helps him. Ruth leaned forward slightly. Your mother made a deal. She would stay. She would keep the family together. But Gerald could never contact Karen again, and the affair would never be spoken about, ever. I stared at her. She just stayed, Sienna, Ruth said gently. Your mother stopped teaching before Marcus was born. Gerald wanted her at home. By the time she learned the truth, she had 3 children, no income, no career, no savings. She had nowhere to go. Staying was survival. I understand that part. Her expression hardened. What I do not understand is what happened next. When I tried to tell the truth, when I pushed Gerald to at least acknowledge Nathan, to send money, anything at all, Donna helped him silence me. Together, they told Marcus and Brooke that I was getting confused. They started visiting less. They skipped my invitations. They told neighbors I was slowing down, that my memory was fading. She paused, her eyes steady on mine. They erased me to protect their secret. And for 30 years, they let that boy grow up without a father, without answers, while we all sat at holiday tables pretending everything was perfect. She tapped her temple with one finger. They didn't just hide the secret, Sienna. They erased me too, and they used my own grandchildren to do it. I felt something break open inside my chest. It wasn't exactly sadness. It was something deeper, something heavier. A slow, steady kind of anger, the kind that doesn't yell or explode. It just stays there, solid, refusing to look away. "Grandma," I said quietly, "why now?" "Why did you wait so long?" She gave a small, almost smile, but it didn't fully form. "I didn't wait because I wanted to," she said. "I waited because every time I tried to speak, they pushed me aside more and more. After a while, I understood they would never let me be the one to tell the truth. If it came from me, they would just say I was confused again, and everyone would believe them." She wrapped both hands around her mug, holding it tightly. 2 years ago, I read an article in the Cedarville Gazette about a woman who found her birth mother through one of those DNA websites. The article explained how it works. You send in a sample, and the system matches you with everyone else in the database: parents, siblings, children. It doesn't matter who submits what. If the DNA connects, the system finds it. She looked at me carefully. That's when I understood. Gerald would never take a test himself. He's too careful. But he wouldn't need to if his children took the test, and if Nathan was already in the system. The connection would happen through you. "You actually researched this?" I asked. "I went to the library," she said. "Used the computer there. Read everything I could. I may be old, Sienna, but I'm not foolish." She set her mug down gently. Brooke came to visit me in April. She was talking about those kits, how she had taken one and found out she was part Scandinavian. She was so excited. I told her it sounded like a wonderful idea for the family. That's all I said. Brooke made her own decision. I just didn't stop her. I leaned back in my chair as everything started to make sense. Ruth's smile at the reunion, my father's hesitation near the grill, his refusal to open the kit, my mother quietly putting hers away. "DNA doesn't lie," Ruth said softly, "and it doesn't get confused. They can call me crazy, but they can't call a 25% match crazy." She reached across the table and gently held my wrist. "Nathan sent his sample 2 years ago. He's been waiting. He just needed the other half to appear." "The other half?" "That was us." That night at 11:14 p.m., I finally replied to Nathan. I typed and erased 6 different messages before settling on the simplest one I could manage. "Yes, I think you are." He replied within 9 minutes. We were on a video call within the hour. When his face appeared on my screen, my breath caught. He had Gerald's jaw, the same shape, the same small cleft in the chin, but his eyes were different. Softer, warm brown instead of cold gray, and when he smiled, nervous but genuine, I saw something my father's face had never shown: kindness without conditions. "I'm Nathan Holt," he said. "I'm 31. I live in Briarfield. I'm a carpenter." His apartment looked small. Behind him, I saw a child's drawing taped to the wall: stick figures, bright colors, a big sun, and a house with a red door. "I have a daughter," he said when he noticed me looking. "Her name is Lily. She's 5. Her mom left when she was 2. It's just us." He told me his story, slowly, piece by piece. Karen raised him alone. She worked at a grocery store, then at a dry cleaner, then at a diner. She never married and never told Nathan his father's name. The only thing she ever said was that he chose his other family. "I took the DNA test 2 years ago," Nathan said. "No matches. No siblings, no father, nothing. I thought maybe he was gone or just never tested. Then 3 weeks ago, 3 matches showed up at the same time. Half sibling, half sibling, half sibling. He held up his phone to the camera. There was an old photo, slightly bent and faded, a young man in a bank uniform with a name badge clipped to his shirt. My mom kept one picture, he said. She never told me his name, but that's him, right? It was Gerald. About 25 years old, smiling in a way I had never really seen before. Young, relaxed, open. Yeah, I said quietly. That's him. That's our father. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, Gerald had already started making calls. Marcus called me at 7 a.m., his voice tight with stress. Sienna, what is going on? Dad says you're talking to some random guy online who claims he's family. He's not random, I said. He matched all 3 of us. Dad says those tests are wrong all the time. 3 separate half-sibling matches are not wrong. Marcus went quiet. Then he said, Dad is really upset. Can you just let this go? I couldn't, and Gerald must have known that because he pushed harder. At noon, Brooke texted me, Sienna, I just left Mom and Dad's. Dad was on the phone with a real estate lawyer. I heard him asking about selling a shared property. He's serious about Grandma's house. An hour later, my mother called again. Her voice had changed. No tears this time, no softness. Just cold and direct. Your father has already spoken to a lawyer about the house on Maple Lane. He's serious, Sienna. If you don't stop this, your grandmother will be in Pine Ridge by Christmas. She said it like she was talking about the weather. I called Ruth right away. She already knew he called me this morning, she said calmly. Same threat he used 30 years ago. Stay quiet or I take everything. Grandma, aren't you scared? I asked. I'm 78 years old, she replied. I've spent 30 years watching my son pretend that child doesn't exist. What else can he take from me that he hasn't already? I ended the call and sat on my kitchen floor, trying to process everything. Gerald was threatening to sell Ruth's home. Nathan was still waiting for answers, and every hour I stayed silent, I felt like I was becoming part of the lie. 4 days passed. Then Gerald called for a family dinner the following Saturday. His voice was calm, almost pleasant, the voice he used at church. I think we all need to sit down and clear the air as a family, he said. I knew what that meant. Gerald didn't clear the air. He controlled the narrative. Still, I went. If I didn't show up, he would tell his version to everyone without me there to challenge it. The dining room at my parents' house was packed. 2 long tables pushed together. Aunt June, Uncle Harold, cousins Marcus and his wife Brooke, and even a few family friends. 22 people in total. The good china was set out. The overhead light felt too bright, almost clinical. Gerald sat at the head of the table, hands folded, expression firm. Donna sat beside him, her eyes already red. I could tell she had been crying ahead of time, setting the mood. I took the only empty seat at the far end of the table, directly across from my father. Gerald waited until everyone settled down before speaking. His voice was calm, steady, practiced. I asked everyone here tonight because our family is under attack. He paused, letting the words sink in. Over the past week, some of you may have heard rumors, accusations based on a DNA test that Brooke, with good intentions, brought to the reunion. He didn't say Nathan's name. Etch. He didn't mention Karen. He didn't mention anything real. I want to be clear, he continued. These results are unreliable, and my daughter Sienna has chosen to follow this fantasy instead of protecting her family. Every head turned toward me. I could feel their eyes, their judgment. Aunt June made a small, disapproving sound. Uncle Harold shook his head. Marcus stared down at the table. Brooke looked like she might cry. Gerald leaned forward slightly. I have given everything to this family, and this is how I'm repaid. I opened my mouth to speak, but he cut me off, his voice just loud enough to control the room without shouting. Sienna, he said, I am giving you a chance right here, in front of everyone, to fix this. Tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you misunderstood the results. Gerald, my mother started quietly. Let her answer, Donna, he said without looking at her. I looked around the table at all the faces waiting for me to either confirm the lie or break it wide open. 21 faces were fixed on me, some soft with concern, most filled with doubt. Aunt June had her arms folded tightly across her chest. Uncle Harold was already shaking his head like he had made up his mind. Well, Gerald said, just as I was about to speak. But before I could get a word out, Donna stood up. Tears were already falling, her hands pressed against her chest, like she was holding herself together. I have given my entire life to this family, she said, her voice breaking in all the right places. I gave up my career, I raised 3 children, I built this home, and now my own daughter is tearing it apart because of some website. She turned toward me, her eyes full of emotion. If you love us, Sienna, you will stop this right now. Aunt June reached over and gently squeezed Donna's arm. She's right, honey. Your mother doesn't deserve this. One of my cousin, Seth, someone I barely even spoke to, muttered under their breath. This is embarrassing. Marcus finally spoke, still not looking up. Sienna, just say sorry, please. Let's move on. I sat there, looking around the table. 22 people. Not a single one had asked what the results actually said. Not one had asked who Nathan was. They had already decided I was the problem because Gerald had spoken first. Gerald had spoken first. My father was winning, and the expression on his face, calm, confident, almost righteous, told me he knew it. I was about to speak when I heard slow footsteps on the front porch. Careful, steady steps. Then the faint creak of the door opening. Every head turned. Ruth walked in. She hadn't been invited. She hadn't been asked to a family dinner in over a year, but she walked through that door like she still owned every piece of that house she had helped build decades ago. She wore a navy cardigan buttoned all the way up. In her right hand was her cane. Under her left arm she carried a thick manila envelope, worn at the edges, the corners bent from years of being handled. Her white hair was neatly pinned back, and her eyes were sharp, clear, and burning with something that felt like controlled fire. Gerald stood up quickly. Mom, this doesn't concern you. It has concerned me for 30 years, Ruth said calmly. Sit down, Gerald. The room fell silent, not the polite kind of silence you get when conversation pauses. This was deeper, heavier, the kind of silence that settles when everyone realizes something important has just shifted. Ruth was the oldest person in that room, the matriarch. Gerald was her son, not the other way around. And no matter how much influence Gerald had built over the years, something deeper in everyone understood that when Ruth spoke, things changed. She walked slowly past Aunt June, past Uncle Harold, past Marcus and Brooke, all the way Oh, the far end of the table. She pulled out the chair beside me and sat down. Then she placed the envelope on the table in front of her. It looked old, folded many times, opened and closed again and again over the years. She rested both hands on top of it. Gerald's eyes locked onto that envelope. And for the first time that night, I saw it, a crack, just for a second, but it was there. He knew what was inside. Donna's hand moved under the table, gripping his arm tightly. Ruth didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Everyone was already listening. She looked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each person. Then she spoke. 30 years ago, my son had an affair with a woman named Karen Holt. She worked at his bank. She became pregnant. Gerald told her to stay quiet or lose her job. She left town and raised his son alone. No one moved. It felt like the entire room had stopped breathing. Gerald pushed his chair back suddenly and stood up. Mom, stop. You're confused. You don't know what you're. I am 78 years old, Ruth said, her voice steady and firm. I am not confused. I am tired of staying silent, tired of being called crazy, and tired of watching my son sit at this table and pretend to be the victim while his child grew up without a father. She turned her gaze to the rest of the family. Donna knew. She found out when Sienna was about 8 years old, and instead of doing the right thing, she helped Gerald keep me quiet. Every time I tried to speak, they cut me off. Fewer visits. Fewer calls. They told Marcus and Brooke that I was getting confused. They told all of you, she gestured toward the table, that I was slowing down. Aunt June slowly pulled her hand away from Donna. Uncle Harold's expression hardened. One of my cousins whispered, "Oh my God, Gerald was still standing, but he looked smaller now. His hands were flat on the table, fingers spread like he needed to steady himself. She doesn't know what she's saying," he said, but his voice had lost its strength. Ruth met his eyes without hesitation. "I know exactly what I'm saying, Gerald. And I have the DNA results to prove it." Gerald gripped the edge of the table. "DNA tests can be wrong. Contaminated samples, lab errors. You can find articles, Dad," I said quietly, but firmly. "Sit down." He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in my life, it felt like he didn't recognize me. Slowly, he sat. I pulled out my phone. The screen was already open. I had prepared for this. "Nathan Holt," I read aloud, 25.3% shared DNA with me, 25.1% with Brooke, 24.8% with Marcus. I looked up. That's half sibling range, all three of us. 3 separate tests, 3 separate samples, 3 separate results. "Someone tampered with it," Gerald said, but his words fell flat. They had no weight anymore. "The only person connected to all 3 matches," I said, "is you?" The room was completely silent. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. Tick, tick, tick. Marcus sat stiff, staring down at his plate like he was trying to avoid reality. His wife covered her mouth with her hand. Brooke was crying quietly, not out of guilt anymore, but from the slow realization that the family she believed in had been built on something false. Aunt June looked at Gerald, then at Donna, then back at Gerald. "Is this true?" she asked softly. 3 simple words, but they carried 30 years of silence. Gerald opened his mouth, then closed it, tried again. Nothing came out. Donna stared down at the table's centerpiece, a vase of cheap daisies, like it was the only thing she could focus on. Their silence answered the question. Ruth placed her hand firmly on the envelope. "Open it," she said to me. I lifted the flap carefully. The envelope felt fragile, worn by time. Inside were papers that had been kept hidden for decades. I pulled out 3 items. The first was a photograph. Small, wallet-sized, edges curled. A toddler with a round face, dark hair, and wide brown eyes looking straight into the camera with fearless curiosity. On the back, written in blue ink, Nathan, 23 months. The second was another photo. I recognized it immediately, even though I had never seen it before. A young man in a bank uniform, white shirt, navy tie, name badge clipped to his pocket. He was smiling openly without any restraint. It was my father at 25, before everything. Before the image he built, the third item was a letter, 3 handwritten pages in neat cursive, the same handwriting I had seen years ago in my father's drawer, the same signature, Karen. Ruth gently took the 2 photographs from me and placed them side by side on the table between the salt shaker and the bread basket. Under the bright light, the resemblance was impossible to ignore. The same jawline, the same brow, the same cleft in the chin. Aunt June leaned forward, her hand slowly rising to her chest. "My God, Gerald, he looks exactly like you." Ruth's voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she rested them near the photo of the toddler. "This is your nephew," she said, looking around at everyone. "His name is Nathan Holt. He is 31 years old. He is a carpenter. He has a 5-year-old daughter named Lily, and he has never, not once in his entire life, met anyone from this family." Ruth's voice stayed steady as she said it. Then she turned her eyes to Gerald. "I held this envelope for 29 years. Do you have any idea what that does to a person?" Gerald said nothing. His chin slowly dropped toward his chest. For a long moment, no one spoke. The photographs Ruth had placed on the table sat there in the center like evidence in a trish. Ayal, no one had agreed to attend. Then Donna broke. Not the soft, controlled crying from before. Not the careful tears she used on the phone. This was different. This was raw. It came from deep inside, shaking her whole body. It wasn't meant to convince anyone. It was real. "I knew," she said, her voice rough and uneven. "I've known since Sienna was 8. She spoke in broken pieces, like someone pulling painful memories out one by one. The phone bill, the number she didn't recognize. The call she made to Karen, just once, just to confirm. Gerald begging. The promise. The deal. He swore it was over," she said. "He swore he would never contact her again." I believed him. She wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand. I had 3 kids, no job, no savings. I hadn't taught in 10 years. Where was I supposed to go? Aunt June's expression had changed. It wasn't sympathy exactly, but something close. Something that understood part of it. "I understand why you stayed, Mom," I said quietly, and I meant it. "But I don't understand the rest." Donna looked up at me, confused. "The rest?" When Grandma tried to tell the truth, I said, "You helped Dad silence her. You told us she was confused. You kept her away from us." Donna opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes moved toward Ruth, who sat still and calm, watching her with a patience that felt almost heavy, the kind of patience built over decades. "I didn't know how to leave," Donna whispered. "So I learned how to pretend." "I know," I said. "But pretending cost Grandma 30 years. And it cost Nathan a father." Donna covered her face with both hands and didn't speak again. Then Gerald stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor, the sound sharp enough to cut through everything. He didn't look at Ruth. He didn't look at me. He didn't even look at the photos still lying on the table. "I'm due." "Me," he said flatly. "This family is done." He walked to the front door, opened it, and left without another word. The door shut behind him with a quiet click. And then there was silence again. Donna stayed where she was, her face still hidden in her hands. Marcus stared at the empty chair where Gerald had been sitting, his jaw tight, moving slightly like he was trying to process something too big to swallow. Then he looked at me. "Is this real?" he asked. "You can check your own results," I said. All 3 of us matched. He leaned forward, pressing his elbows onto the table, both hands against his temples. "I called you a liar," he said, "last week. I told you that you were destroying the family." "I know," I said gently. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked when he said it. "I didn't. I just believed Dad." I always believed him. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his arm. "I know, Marcus. That's how it worked." Brooke was still crying quietly, wiping her face over and over. Aunt June sat with her arms no longer crossed, her hands resting flat on the table, looking at Ruth with something that felt like regret. Uncle Harold cleared his throat, but didn't say anything. He just stared down at the tablecloth. Then Marcus asked the question that actually mattered. Does he want to meet us? Ruth smiled, a real smile, the second one I had seen from her in years. That night, I called Nathan from Ruth's kitchen. I sat in the same chair where I had first heard the truth. Ruth sat beside me, her hands clasped together, her eyes fixed on my phone like it was something alive. Nathan answered on the second ring. His voice sounded careful, like he was bracing himself. Sienna, I told them. I said, tonight, in front of everyone they know. There was silence? 3 seconds. Then 5. How bad? He asked. Bad. Honest. For the first time in 30 years, honest? I heard him exhale slowly, a long, shaky breath. It sounded like something heavy finally being released. My father walked out. I continued. But my brother Marcus, your brother Marcus, asked if you would want to meet us. There was another pause, longer this time. I have a daughter, Nathan said quietly. Her name is Lily. She's 5. Sometimes she asks me why she doesn't have grandparents like the other kids. My throat tightened. Next to me, Ruth pressed her hand against her chest. There's someone here who wants to talk to you, I said softly. I handed the phone to Ruth. She held it carefully, like it might break. She pressed it to her ear and closed her eyes. Nathan, she said, this is your grandmother. My name is Ruth. And I am so sorry it took this long. I couldn't hear what he said back, but I didn't need to. I watched Ruth's face, the way her chin trembled, the way her eyes stayed closed, the way her hand pressed harder against her chest like she was trying to hold herself steady. You have a family, she said quietly. It's not perfect. It's messy and broken, but it's real. And you were always part of it, even when they tried to erase you. In a town like Cedarville, news doesn't spread quickly. It seeps, slowly, quietly, like water moving through walls. No one posted anything online. No one called the newspaper. But 22 people had been in that room, and 22 people went home and told someone. A spouse, a friend, a neighbor. Within 2 weeks, Pastor Jim from Grace Community Church called Gerald in for a private talk. I don't know exactly what was said. Gerald never told me, but the next Sunday, his usual seat, front pew, left side, was empty. A short note appeared in the church bulletin. Gerald Evans had stepped back from his role as deacon to focus on family matters. Focus on family matters. The most polite way possible to describe something like this. No one confronted Gerald directly. No public scenes. No loud accusations. Instead, things changed quietly. People stopped inviting him. The Rotary Club dinners, the neighborhood planning meetings, the Wednesday Bible study, no doors slammed shut. They just quietly stayed closed. Donna stepped away from the bake sale committee. She stopped organizing the church potluck. I don't know if anyone asked her to leave or if she just couldn't face people anymore. Either way, the role she had built her life around slowly disappeared. I didn't feel any sense of victory. I didn't feel satisfied. Mostly, I felt tired and a little sad. Because the version of Gerald Evans that the town admired, the perfect deacon, the model family man, that person had never really existed. The truth didn't destroy him. It just stopped protecting him. The Evans family broke apart. There's no easy way to say it. On one side were Marcus, Brooke, Ruth, Aunt June, and a few cousins who had been at that dinner and seen everything with their own eyes. They didn't agree on everything. They didn't forgive at the same speed, but they chose the truth, even when it was painful. On the other side were Uncle Harold, a couple of cousins, and some family friends who had known Gerald for years and couldn't accept what had come out. They held on to the version of him they believed in, even when the facts said otherwise. Harold called me 3 days after the dinner. You destroyed your father, he said, his voice sharp and certain. His choices destroyed him, Uncle Harold. I just refused to keep hiding them, I replied. He hung up immediately. We haven't spoken since. Donna reached out a few times after that, always by text. Every message started the same way. Something like, I hope you're doing okay. I recognized what she was doing. She was testy, aging the water, seeing if it was safe, without fully stepping in. Each time I answered the same way, Mom, I love you, but I'm not going to pretend anymore. When you're ready to be honest, really honest, I'm here. She never replied to that part. Gerald said nothing. No calls, no messages, nothing passed through Marcus or Brooke. Just silence. I expected anger, maybe threats, something loud. Instead, I got absence. And if I'm honest, that felt exactly like him. When he couldn't control the situation, he simply removed himself from it. Brooke struggled the most. She kept blaming herself for bringing the DNA kits, even though none of this was her fault. I sat with her on her couch one afternoon, holding her hand. You didn't cause this. I told her. He did 30 years ago. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe it yet. Nathan came to visit on a Saturday in late August. He drove the 2 hours from Briarfield with Lily in the back seat, her legs swinging, a stuffed rabbit resting in her lap. I was standing on Ruth's porch when his truck pulled into the driveway. It was an old blue Chevy, the paint worn near the wheels, a toolbox fixed to the back. He parked and didn't move for a full minute. Just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house. Then Lily tapped on the window from inside. Daddy, are we going in? She asked. He got out, lifted her into his arms, and walked up the steps. Ruth was standing in the doorway. She had dressed carefully, a clean blouse, her pearl earrings, a small touch of lipstick. Her hands gripped the doorframe tightly. When she saw Nathan, her expression changed in a way I still can't fully describe. It wasn't just sadness. It wasn't just happiness. It was something deeper, like seeing a memory come back to life. You have his face, she said softly, but you have Karen's eyes. Nathan lowered his head slightly, his breath catching. Lily looked between them, confused by the silence. Ruth opened her arms. Nathan stepped forward, and she hugged him gently at first, then tighter. Her small frame shook against his. She placed her hand on the back of his head the way someone does with a baby. And in that moment, I realized she was finally holding the child she had been kept from all those years. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have fought harder. You fought enough, Grandma, Nathan said, his voice breaking. You got me here. Lily tugged at Ruth's cardigan. Are you my great-grandma? Ruth laughed, a real unexpected laugh. I am, sweetheart. I absolutely am. 3 months passed. Things didn't settle. They shifted. I went back to work at County General, long shifts, patients, charts, routines that didn't care about family drama. In some ways, I was grateful for that. The hospital became the one place where everything felt normal. Nathan started visiting every other weekend. He and Ruth built a routine together. Lunch at her kitchen table, Lily sitting on the floor with crayons Ruth bought from the dollar store. Ruth even started keeping a purple crayon tucked behind her ear because Lily said it was her favorite color. Seeing a 78-year-old woman walking around like that, with a crayon behind her ear like a carpenter's pencil, was something that almost made everything feel lighter. Almost. Marcus met Nathan in September. They sat on Ruth's porch for about an hour, mostly quiet, drinking iced tea, and occasionally pointing at something in the yard. It was awkward, but it was real. I can't believe I have a brother I didn't know about. Marcus said later, You always did. I told him. You just didn't know. Brooke took longer, but she got there. She slowly stopped blaming herself. By October, she was sending Nathan memes and pictures of her cat, which, For Brooke was basically her way of saying she accepted him. Donna kept texting me once a week, short messages, thinking of you, hope work is going well. There were no apologies, no emotional pressure, just small signs that she was still there, even if she didn't know how to fix things. Gerald remained silent. I didn't chase him. I didn't call or send messages, hoping for a reply. I had spent my whole life trying to keep the peace in the family. I wasn't doing that anymore. Then one evening in late October, my phone lit up while I was folding laundry. It said, "Dad?" I let it ring 3 times before answering. His voice sounded different. No authority, no control, none of that polished tone he used in public. He sounded tired, truly tired, like someone who had been holding something heavy for too long. "I'm not calling to apologize," he said. "I don't know how. I don't know if I can." I stayed quiet, "But I need to ask you something." "Okay," I said. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing slowly. Is Nathan okay?" 4 simple words, 30 years late, but it was the first time I had ever heard my father say Nathan's name. "He's okay," I said. "He's a carpenter. He builds furniture, really nice pieces, and he has a daughter. Her name is Lily. She's 5. Silence again, long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Gerald," I said, "I'm here." His voice came back, thick and heavy. "I made a mess, Sienna." "Yeah, Dad," I said quietly. "You did?" More silence. I could have filled it with anger, or comfort, or everything he had done wrong, but I didn't. He needed to sit in it. "I don't know what happens next," he said. "Neither do I," I replied. "But when you're ready to meet him, really meet him. Not as a problem, but as your son. Call me." "And if I'm not ready?" he asked. I thought about that. About Ruth waiting 30 years. About Nathan searching for 15. About Lily drawing pictures of a family she didn't have. "I'm not going to wait forever," I said. "But the door isn't closed." "Not yet." He thanked me quietly. Then he hung up. There's something I should admit, because if I don't, it might sound like I handled everything better than I actually did. The night after that dinner, after everything came out, after my father walked out, I didn't go home feeling strong or proud. I went home and completely fell apart. I sat in my car in my driveway for 40 minutes. The engine was off. The lights were off. My hands were still on the steering wheel. I replayed everything in my head, every face at that table. Aunt June's judgment. Harold shaking his head. Marcus calling me a liar. My mother's tears. My father's anger. I picked up my phone and called Jess, my best friend from nursing school, the only person outside the family who knew everything. "I think I ruined everything," I told her. "What did you ruin?" she asked. "My family." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Sienna, you didn't ruin anything. You just stopped agreeing to carry their damage." "That's not the same thing. They all hate me," I said. "They're not mad at you for breaking the family," she replied. "They're mad at you for breaking the silence." I sat with that after we hung up. Breaking the silence. That was the real problem. In our family, the worst thing you could do wasn't lying. It wasn't cheating. It wasn't abandoning someone. The worst thing was saying the truth out loud. I cried in that car. Not quietly. Not neatly. The kind of crying where you can't breathe properly, where your whole body shakes. I let it happen. I let it pass through me. And when it was over, I wiped my face, started the engine, and drove to Ruth's house. Because the only thing worse than the pain of telling the truth was the kind of person I would become if I stayed silent. There's one more voice you need to hear. Not mine. Not Ruth's. Karen's. Nathan connected us on a phone call about a month after the dinner. I didn't know what to expect. In my mind, Karen had become this shadow, Just a name, the K at the bottom of a letter, a ghost my father had been running from for 30 years. She wasn't a ghost. She was a 56-year-old woman with a warm voice, a dry sense of humor, and absolutely no interest in Gerald Evans. "I'm not looking for anything from your father," she said calmly. "No apology, no money, and definitely not a relationship. That ship sank 30 years ago, and I'm not going looking for it." She told me her story in a simple, direct way. She was 25. Gerald was her manager. He told her he was unhappy at home. She believed him. Then she got pregnant. When she told him, he told her to handle it. She refused. Then he told her if she ever said his name, he would make sure she never found work in Cedarville again. "So I left," she said. "Moved to Briarfield. Had Nathan in a hospital where nobody knew me. Raised him alone. Got my GED. Worked every job you can imagine." Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was just telling the truth. "He told me he loved me," she said, "and then he told me to disappear. So I did. For Nathan, I did." I asked her if she was okay with everything coming out now, with the family finally knowing. "Honey," she said, "I've been okay for years. I didn't need your father to be okay. I just needed someone, anyone, to stop pretending my son doesn't exist." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the wall for a long time. Karen Holt had raised a good man completely on her own. No money, no support, no recognition. That's not just a sad story. That's strength. In November, Brooke told me she had stopped by our parents' house to drop off groceries. She was still doing that, still trying to keep some sense of normal life alive. And while she was there, she noticed something on the kitchen counter. "A printed application," she said. "For a part-time library assistant job at the Cedarville Public Library." Mom filled it out, like actually filled it out. Name, education, references. She even listed her old teaching credentials. I didn't respond right away. "Sienna? You still there?" Brooke asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'm here. Donna hadn't told me. She hadn't called to explain or ask for praise. She hadn't used it to make a point. She had just done it quietly." I thought about what 30 years of depending on someone else financially can do to a person, how it limits your choices, how it can pull you into things you might never accept otherwise. I didn't forgive everything my mother had done. I couldn't. Maybe I never will? What happened to Ruth, the way she was pushed out, the way she was made to seem confused, the way tears were used to control situations, those were choices. But filling out a job application at 58 after being out of work for decades, that was also a choice. A small one, a quiet one, but it mattered. Did she get the job? I asked Brooke. "I don't know," she said. She didn't mention it. I just saw the paper. I thought about calling Donna. I decided not to. Some changes don't need attention. They just need space to happen. Change isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a printed form sitting on a kitchen counter, still warm from the printer. I should go back for a moment to the night before I first video called Nathan. I was sitting in my living room with my laptop open, doing something I probably shouldn't admit, but I know most people would do the same. I looked him up, Nathan Holt, Briarfield, Ohio. I found his Facebook profile. It was simple, not very active, a few pictures over the years. One photo stopped me. Nathan was kneeling in a workshop sanding a small wooden bookshelf. Lily was sitting on a counter nearby, holding a paintbrush covered in bright blue paint. She was smiling at the camera. He was smiling at her. Behind them, tools were neatly arranged on the wall, everything in its place. I zoomed in on his face. The jawline was Gerald's. The brow was Gerald's. But the smile wasn't. It was softer. Warmer, like a version of my father that could have existed if he had chosen honesty instead of control. There was another photo, Nathan carrying Lily on his shoulders at a county fair. She was holding cotton candy like a prize, and his hand was steady on her ankle. Just a father and his daughter. Nothing fancy, nothing fake. I thought about my father's world's best dad apron, the one he wore at the reunion, flipping burgers for a family that didn't include the son he had abandoned. I closed the laptop. I had seen enough. I already knew who Nathan Holt was. He was part of our family long before we ever admitted it. The photo we took later was Brooke's idea. Of course it was. It was a Sunday afternoon in November. We were standing on Ruth's front porch, the old one with the creaky third step, and the wind chime Grandpa had hung years ago. The maple tree in the yard had turned bright gold. Brooke set up her phone on a tripod she had bought just for this. Marcus stood on one side, hands in his pockets, looking slightly uncomfortable. Brooke stood next to him, smiling. I stood beside her. Nathan held Lily in his arms. She was wearing a purple dress and holding a crayon drawing she had made of all of us. Stick figures, a big sun, a house with a red door that looked just like Ruth. Ruth stood in the center. She wore her pearl earrings again. She held Nathan's arm with one hand and Lily's tiny fingers with the other. "Everyone ready?" Brooke asked. "Wait," Ruth said softly. She looked at all of us. Her son wasn't there. Her daughter-in-law wasn't there. The family she had built over decades wasn't complete. But she smiled anyway, fully, honestly. "This is the first honest family photo we've ever taken," she said. Brooke took the picture. "I set it as my phone wallpaper that same night. It isn't perfect. Marcus is mid-blink. Lily is looking off at something else. Nathan's eyes are still a little red, but it's the most beautiful photo I've ever seen. Because it's real. It's not the family I thought I had. It's the family I actually have, and for the first time in my life, everyone in that picture knows exactly who they are." So this is what I want to leave you with. I know someone reading this is living a version of this story right now. Maybe you're the one who keeps the peace, the one who changes the subject when things get uncomfortable, the one who carries everyone else's secrets and calls it loyalty. That was me for 34 years, and I learned something. Keeping the peace is not peace if it costs you the truth. After that dinner, I set 3 boundaries for myself. I wrote them down and kept them where I could see them every day. First, I will only have a relationship with Gerald when he acknowledges Nathan. Not apologizes, acknowledges, says his name, accepts that he exists. Second, I will only have a relationship with Donna when she stops using guilt and tears as tools. When we can talk honestly without manipulation. Third, Nathan and Lily are part of my life. No conditions, no waiting period. They are family. They always were. My grandmother held the truth for 30 years, and she taught me something I will never forget. The truth doesn't destroy families. Lies do. And silence. Silence is just a lie that takes longer to explode. I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped helping it stay buried. And the woman who made all of this possible, the one who kept that envelope safe for decades, the one who now walks around with a purple crayon behind her ear, she's sitting on her porch right now in her own home, on her own terms, exactly where she belongs. That's my story, at least the part I can tell for now. If this felt familiar to you, if you've ever been the one carrying secrets that were never yours to carry, you're not alone. And maybe it's time to stop carrying them.